welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. You know, if it's Friday, it's a good day. It's Fundraisers Friday, which is even a better day. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Julie. It's good to see you. Happy Friday. You know, the end of the week and a holiday weekend. Holiday coming up soon for folks. So just feeling a lot of gratitude for today and every day.
I love it, Tony. I think that's a great way to frame up our conversation today, because we're going to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in fundraising. And I think a lot of times we, in the nonprofit sector, we've talked about DEI, but we haven't really included fundraising in it. It's kind of been like looked at differently. And so I'm really interested to explore this with you and hopefully get our fundraisers to lead in this discussion, because this is really a critical piece of the pie. Another critical piece of our pie are our sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, which is where we are today, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the amazing folks that join us day in and day out so we can have these discussions. Amazing discussions that we get to have with our co-host. And again, it's Tony Beall, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. But let's talk about covering DEI and addressing the systematic challenges. I feel like a lot of times, and I'm just going to call it out, that a lot of boards or C-suites are like, go to the rich white donors. And they just kind of, that's where it starts, right? We have this attitude that only certain types of people can be engaged in philanthropy. And then that's such a bad concept that it kind of permeates everything. And I don't know if this is like out of left field, if you're just like, Julia, what the heck are you talking about, sister? But that's
what are you saying there, girlfriend?
It's just like what I think.
Yeah, well, no, I think that's a super example and a great place to start with this conversation. I think it's important to start the conversation by saying DEI in your organization is not a project or a program.
Okay.
DEI are norms and culture. So it's very different. You don't start a DEI project, right? DEI lives and breathes every day, every minute, every second within us as individuals and within our organization. And you said something also really important in your opening comment there, Julia, in that it really needs to start from the top. It needs support all around, but if the behaviors at the top do not represent a culture or norms around diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, then it means nothing. To the team members within the organization, it means nothing to the organizations that you serve. It means nothing to your current or potential donors or investors. So it's really important to remind folks that DEI may start with initiatives, but it's not a program or project.
Wow, I love that you said this, because, in the last 12 to 14 months, we've seen across corporate America, people saying, oh, we're going to close down the DEI, section or program because it's just ridiculous and it's controversial and blah, 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 blah. And I love that you said this, that it shouldn't be programmatic. It should be thematic and a value proposition. That, for me, that changes the whole thing.
Yeah, well, and when we talk about, thanks, Julia, when we talk about DEI in fundraising, kind of what that means is creating equitable, accessible, culturally sensitive approaches to our potential donors, investors, and the community that we serve. I had the great pleasure in my most recent position of being responsible for a lot of the DEI work within our business unit, and connecting with folks and having conversations with folks, and being challenged in the ways in which I think, or the ways that I may speak in certain settings. And so DEI and embracing DEI within your culture and your norms really creates a terrific opportunity for growth for all of us as individuals and as an organization. I did a lot of research. I know sometimes I apologize to our viewers because I'm often, looking at my notes just to make sure that I don't mess anything up. But I did that today too, because anyone that knows me knows that this is really important to me. As a former executive director of a gay and lesbian community center here in South Florida, or just, in my own upbringing where it was very clear the haves and the have-nots, and the lack of access and equity for the have-nots, it's always been ingrained in me. So I don't want to screw up today and today's topic by not, speaking very intentionally and truthfully around this topic.
Well, and I appreciate you witnessing that, because it seems to me that, in my lifetime, this is a conversation that's really less than 60 months old. And we've kind of skirted around it, and we've had, sensitivities, but it has not been across our communities. It has not been something that we have been talking about in the for-profit sector and the nonprofit sector to the degree that we should. And so it is still new going, right? I mean, it seems like maybe it shouldn't be, and it's not. But if you think about all the different value propositions that we have in American business, and I'm going to throw the nonprofit sector into that.
Of course.
This has not really been a conversation that we've had as long as maybe some of us think we have. It really is somewhat of a new, and I'm going to say shamefully new, right? Shamefully new.
Well, I think the intention around it is new. I think that when we, and you and I talk, we've been in the sector for a while and very grateful for it. But when I reflect back on the early days of working in the nonprofit sector, we just assumed we did all this, right? Because we're good people and we want to do good things, and we're working for good organizations that have great missions and are benefiting others. None of this could possibly be existing inside of me, let alone inside the organization that I'm working in or leading, because we just didn't see it or understand it the way that we see it and understand it today. So with new knowledge comes new opportunity to change past beliefs and past behaviors. Yeah. So I think you're spot on with that. It's we just didn't recognize it as something that we needed to do because we put ourselves in a feel-good environment when we're working in the nonprofit sector.
Right. Well, and I can say as a female, Tony, the concept of equality, was so gender oriented for so long, right? Mm-hmm. And then we didn't talk about socioeconomics. We didn't talk about language. We didn't talk about, the issue of human sexuality. We didn't talk about the issue of family structure, right?
Yeah, all of it. Mental health, physical ability. Yes, all of it.
Yeah, all of it. And so I feel like it's a new dawn and it's evolving, right? What are we going to talk about in terms of who's at the table? Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that we can be talking about. And so it's kind of an exciting time. But I think the biggest thing for me to hear from you today is the issue of, and I'm going to call it out, program versus value from Tone at the top. Is this a value that your organization has, or is this a program? And if it's a program, that means it's not going to last. It's not going to ingrain and become something that is part of your organization. That's kind of like an aha moment for me, Tony.
Yeah, well, when we talk about DEI, a lot of times we use the term, at least I do, practices. What are the DEI practices within your, within your organization? And practices are part of, standard, right? Standard practices, standard procedures.
Yeah.
It is a norm within our organization. But for it to be a norm, you have to call it out in conversations when it's not there, but you also have to call it out and celebrate when it's there. And I'll give you an example of that. With my most recent employer, I had opportunity to provide feedback on marketing materials. And, and we were doing great, like to look at it like, oh, yes, this is so representative. It's like, every color under the rainbow is represented here. And I had said once, yeah, that's great, but I don't see anybody using adaptive devices. Like, where are our folks that that are spending their days in an adaptive device, in a wheelchair, in a scooter? And so I remember how proud I was when we did our first marketing piece. I get teary-eyed. Sorry, I'm that person.
No, that's great.
When we had our first marketing piece with someone at their desk, at their laptop, please, engage in our webinar, and sitting there, using adaptive devices. So when we talk about diversity, it's more than the colors of the rainbow. It's all of the things that make humans special.
I love that. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll recall a quick story. When I first met you, I was working on some items and I had submitted them to you, and it was a deck, right? It was a show deck, and you were going to be our guest. And this is what we do. We don't just have our guests come on blind, and we craft these show decks, we send them out, and then we make sure that everybody understands what the conversation is, even though it'll be unique and different on that day. We kind of have this arc. And I remember you said, and I think you were the first person that ever said this to me, I appreciate that you have a diverse look across these slides. And I had never thought of it. I had honestly, I wasn't like, oh, we ticked off these boxes. It was just kind of an interesting thing. And so you making me think that.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, what you said was so important. DEI is not about ticking boxes.
Yeah.
And I've heard many folks, say that. And so that's just a testament to you, Julia, in that it's inherent in you that you want to, that representation exists. But for a lot of folks, it's not inherent. And so there's a lot of intentionality that has to take place in order for DEI to live and breathe every day in your organization. I mean, it's about respecting diversity. It's about promoting equity. It's about ensuring accessibility and embracing transparency. So that's, those are all of what I consider to be, the foundations of DEI that thrives within an organization or within their fundraising practices.
Interesting. Well, I can always do better. And I think that you've helped me to understand that. And I think that's a super cool thing. I want to move on to something that is kind of interesting. And that is like the impacts that we might encounter or we might not even understand. But when it comes into working with foundations and our funders, it seems to me that we're getting funders to ask more questions about who's on our board, what does our board makeup look like? I mean, I remember the big scandal not only 10 years ago when foundations started saying what percentage of your board members donate to your organization. And that was like, well, that's so private. You know what I mean? That was, remember, yeah, it was like, oh my gosh. But now it's like, okay, we're leading more into this. And so if you could chat with us a little bit about what you're seeing and what you think is going to be on the horizon for this.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it's going to go, Julia. And I was excited about today's conversation because we need to keep talking about it.
Yes.
Because there is a pushback around DEI and the term woke, right, or wokeness. So there is a pushback. So I'm not sure where it's going to go. And my belief is that most foundations will continue to lean towards DEI and access. I think most of them have turned the corner, and it's too late for them to go back. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But I do see conversations taking place around the board makeup and the representation on the board, or the representation within your staff, and that representation being representative of the communities that were created to serve.
Yeah.
So that again, decisions being made on how to serve a particular community is represented by people in the community, that those folks have a voice. That's what part of DEI and fundraising is all about. It's creating these opportunities, these touch points, these onboarding opportunities for folks within the communities that are being served to have a voice and to be part of the solution, whether that be programmatically or part of the solution and contributing or investing in the mission. So to your point earlier, it's not, there's a whole rainbow of people that want to contribute to nonprofit organizations. And we need to promote equity by highlighting and putting a spotlight on those folks that are contributing monetarily to our organization in lower dollar amounts, so that everyone again can see all of the colors of the rainbow that are supporting. Even, again, there are plenty of individuals of color contributing at high levels within an organization, right?
Yeah. I think one of the big gripes that I have, and this I think is because of where I live in the Southwest, I'm amazed at the number of nonprofits that serve a Hispanic population, which my state was a part of Mexico only 150 years ago. So we are a new state and we have a predominantly based Hispanic culture, right? I'm stunned by the number of boards that do not have one person that can even speak Spanish. And I'm not saying like they're native speakers. I'm just saying like pretty basic, right? And then you're getting these people making decisions when they don't even have the language that gets involved in the mission. And it makes me crazy. And when we bring this up and we talk about this, the thing that's sad, Tony, is that a lot of people will say, wow, I never thought of that. It's like, how could you not think of this when, walk into your campus and you have forms and you have signs and you have people speaking Spanish that you are serving. And yet then you have this whole other group of people making decisions that have no idea what the language is. It's just heartbreaking. And I feel this is a DEI issue. And I don't know what you think about that, but to me, that's part of it.
Well, I think that our role in that, Julia, is to be advocates and to call it out. When we see it, and not be shy about doing that, and doing it in a way that doesn't make folks feel like they're being reprimanded for past beliefs or past behaviors, but just again to call it out, to heighten the awareness, and to educate. And then once you've educated them, if they choose not to change, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. But we can't sit idly by and just let it happen when we know it can be better. And so, being allies and advocates is really, really important in the entire concept of DEI and accessibility.
And I think for me, Tony, the way you just phrased it so beautifully, this is a leadership issue. We try and pride ourselves in the nonprofit sector of seeing something that we believe should not be. should be changed, should be solved, overcome, whatever words you want to use. And
Mhm.
so this should become part of our vocabulary and our approach and our value system, and not just, as you said so brilliantly, a program.
Mhm.
It needs to be more directed towards that. Let's talk a little bit about this. And you started to touch on this about inclusive fundraising. I think this is a fascinating topic because, again, it's like, oh, who are the usual suspects that we can go to for money, right? And so then we never introduce the concept of philanthropy to people. We never invite them in.
Mhm.
And I think that is a big thing that we as fundraisers need to be talking about. What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. So to your point, Julia, when we said, these donors, these white donors, with a lot of money. So just
Yeah.
kind of shifting the way in which, we traditionally measure our
Mhm.
work. What are the metrics? So do we start measuring more so based on donor engagement than on donor dollar amount? So that's one of the things that comes to mind. And again, I'm looking at my notes because I don't want to miss anything because I put something specifically about this.
I
This
love it.
and that was pretty much it. Is donor engagement. It's really looking at some of our metrics. I mentioned this already, but promoting donor equity so that you're shining a spotlight on all of your donors at all ranges of giving.
Mhm.
And that's one way to define and model inclusive fundraising. Thinking about your marketing materials, we spoke a little bit about that, but it's not just how do they look, how do they sound? Are you offering them in multiple languages? Uh,
Yeah.
so so here in South Florida, it's important to, English, Spanish, Creole. It's important to have information available in Creole. Uh, so again, it takes intention. It takes being able to accept that maybe some things aren't good, and being able to remove any ego from that,
Mhm.
and any personal feelings, in order to embrace it and make it better, and to change the process.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a really cool way to look at it. And I think, again, this is a tone at the top issue. If you don't have this spirited discussion coming from the top, and I loved what you said. You got to look at this as an educational piece.
Well, training is critical. So, training your staff, training your board members. There are so many resources available today.
Mhm.
Start a book club within your organization. Have everyone read a book around diversity, equity, and inclusion in fundraising. They're out there.
Mhm.
And then come together and have a group discussion around it, and rate yourself on, how does your organization perform, around DEI compared to what, being recommended in the readings.
Right.
Another great opportunity or great resource, which I love, is the Museum of Tolerance. So check out the Museum of
Yes.
Tolerance and what they have in their programming. I had the
Mhm.
great fortune of going there and having face-to-face training at the Museum of Tolerance, which is in Beverly Hills, so not such a bad place to have to go.
Yeah.
Uh, but really, I mean, just what they offer is incredible.
Mhm.
So all of the resources, you don't if you don't have the money to invest,
Mhm.
there are lots of ways to be creative. Plenty of webinars,
Mhm.
stuff that folks can watch or read, and then come together and have a discussion about it.
I love that you said that because I think that's a great thing to consider given the climate and how we see organizations pulling back and saying we're not going to be so vociferous about this. Talk to us as we finish up today, kind of with that trajectory of inviting thought leaders in to talk about this. And I'm very interested to see to think about what other folks would say, like if it's for profit or nonprofit. It could be somebody from a university system, a hospital system. It doesn't have to be somebody that's in your particular part of the sector, but
Mhm.
just hearing about what their experiences are and maybe how they overcame challenges.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think it's really important to invite thought leaders and other folks in your community to come in and kind of share how they've either, built stronger DEI practices within their organizations, the benefits that they've seen from that, not only in terms of their internal team well-being, but what it's meant for donors and the communities that they serve. Definitely have them come in. And sometimes it's hard for folks, Julia, to think that, okay, I need to specifically ask a woman of color to come in and talk about her experience as a donor. But it's important. So that might make someone feel uncomfortable, but that's how intentional you have to be in order to move this forward. Otherwise, that female donor of color, her story goes nowhere. Right. Her experience goes nowhere. So that's what you want to hear. You want to hear that lived experience to help guide your decisions around DEI practices for your organization and within your fundraising strategies.
Right. Well, I can witness to you that as somebody who has to book people on the nonprofit show and talk about a myriad of things, a lot of times I will start by saying, I'm not asking you to represent, in your case, in this example, all women of color who are donors. I'm just asking for you to talk about what it is that's been your experience. Because I think that's one of those things is you put pressure upon people to serve as the voice of an entire group of people. And, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you say that because it really is about their individual experience, their journey that they're sharing. Sure, there's going to be others that have had that same experience, but it's a lot. You definitely don't want someone to feel like they're speaking for an entire community.
Yeah, because that's just brutal, and I think it kind of marches along the same path of why this is a problem, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's just really kind of not doing anything to help us get some different viewpoints. And I think that's really powerful because to your point, it's not a one and done. I think that you get a woman of color who's a certain age or comes from a certain part of the country or who works in a certain sector. I mean, they're going to have those three profiles are going to be completely different. And we need to be hearing about this. We need to be asking these questions. And I appreciate and applaud anyone who will speak up, not only ask the questions, but then who will come back and say, this is my lived experience and this is how I feel. And it's probably going to be pretty shocking to hear some of these things.
It usually is, but that's what is often needed. Sometimes we underestimate the shock value, but sometimes we have to be shocked into reality.
Yeah. Well, you are never shocking, my friend Tony Beall, when you join us on the Nonprofit Show. I love this conversation. I think you gave me a new lens with which to think about this. Again, I'll repeat it because it just struck me so profoundly. This is not a programmatic issue. This is a value proposition. And when we kind of switch that up, I think it's a wonderful way to navigate it forward. I really appreciate you helping us to understand this. This needs to be something that we continue to talk about, Tony.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you again for, providing an opportunity just to kind of share my experience and things that I've heard and learned. And I'll say that this is probably one of the topics I was the most nervous about. And that's just because I care so much about it. I didn't want to undervalue the importance, and I wanted to say all the right things in my delivery. So I would say to anyone watching or listening, reach out to me if there's anything I could have said better or that I need to understand better. I embrace that with open arms every day. But this, it is an important topic. It's something that needs to be talked about all the time.
Right.
And folks receive it differently and express it differently. So, Julie, again, thank you and the Nonprofit Show for providing a platform for these kind of conversations.
Well, I'm all in because I need to be educated and brought up to speed like everyone else. I mean, I'm not pure of heart, thought, action, and deed, right? I mean, I'm part of the problem, and so I understand that this is something that we need to continuously think about and support. And I appreciate you being with me on that journey. Who is also on that journey with us are our amazing partners, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, which is today, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Clear Impact, and Third Sector Company. Tony, you, my friend, are a blessing. As we enter the season of gratitude, I have total gratitude towards you, that amazing brain of yours, and the things that you teach me and share with all of our viewers and listeners. It is truly something I am grateful for. So thank you, my friend.
Feelings mutual. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody have a great weekend. And next week is a holiday week. We will be here. We won't be doing a show on Thursday or Friday, but we'll be here loading up front. And of course, you can always access all of our archives. And we end you with this message. And it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. Thank you, everyone.